Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's All About Birding the Border. We hope everyone is excited to hear a little bit about Birding the Border. My name is Emily Grant, and I am the Birding with Extension Program Coordinator. I am a extension agent in Gillespie County with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. Joining me today from the Birding with Extension team is Liz Tidwell. She serves as the small acreage program specialist.
Wildlife program specialist. One of these days,
I'll get it right.
You'll get it. It's okay.
It's all right. And then also today joining us is Brian Koch. Brian is our lead birding guide. He's been with the Texas A&M Extension birding team since the beginning, since the very first Birding the Border in 2012, maybe?
17.
17. I was, no, 12 is when I graduated college, maybe. Oh my God, I don't know. Anyways, and so we're excited to have Brian to share his birdie perspective that you have been reading on the website, but a little bit of other things about all of our sites. Brian is a professional birding guide, lives in New Mexico, but originally from Brackettville, which is Kinney County, which is one of the two counties we reside in. Do y'all have anything else to add about yourselves?
I think that covers it.
I think you did a fantastic job.
I tried. So we're excited today to talk all about Birding the Border and answer any questions that y'all might have about the registration process. So throughout the presentation this evening, if you have any questions, just please put those in the chat or the question and answer feature. And we'll get back with y'all at the end of the presentation. We'll answer all of those questions. So feel free to type those there and we will answer those as we go. So Liz, I'll let you kick it off.
Okay, let me just get everything set up. I will share my screen and we will kick everything off.
And just so everyone knows, I'm ahead of the game because I already hit the record button. We're not going to have to do this again.
That is always good news.
So, really quickly before, as you get everything set up, Liz, I'm going to give a brief introduction about Birding the Border. Birding the Border started in 2017, as Liz corrected me. It started off as a 3-day adventure in Kinney County. Our goals were to highlight private land owners' ranches that birders could not normally access, and the management strategies that they were implementing for wildlife and agriculture all at the same time. And so while we have grown to offer 6 different trips a day, our mission still remains the same: to support our private landowners and their wildlife and songbird management strategies, as well as connect them with y'all, our birders, to be able to have the opportunity to bird some of those private or restricted access public areas in Valverde and Kinney County, so in the Del Rio Brackettville area. So it's been exciting to see our dream kind of grow. One thing I hope that you get from our conversations today, even virtually, is that our goal is for this to be a kind of a family and welcome you to the Birding with Extension family. And so we want you to feel like you're at home with us and enjoy your time at Birding the Border and get to know y'all as well as y'all get to know us throughout the week. So I will let you kick it off, Liz, with some of the most important things. I would assume first of which, the dates.
Yes. Okay. So trying to remember what the first slide is. Anyway, so Birding the Border is going to take place in, like Emily has already said, it's going to be Del Rio, Texas. And Del Rio is kind of this very unique location because it sits right on the cusp of 3 different ecoregions. So you have the Chihuahuan Desert to the west, you have the Texas Hill Country to the north, and you have this sort of South Texas brush, basically east and south. So it's kind of this like really cool hub, as well as it's pretty well right in the middle of the Central Flyway. So you really, I mean, if y'all are super avid birders, you know that during migration, pretty much anything can happen. Del Rio is a super cool place. The dates for Birding the Border are, we start on May 1st is when you come in. We have completely forgot that we had this first slide. I thought it was scheduled first. Anyway, so yes, dates are May 1st oh my god, May 1st through the 4th of 2025. Our feature bird for this year is the hooded oriole. If you tuned into Cup Chat this morning, we already revealed that. Apparently I've been leaking it for a while and I've been unaware. I've just been so excited to share this. But yeah, so if you've never attended Birding the Border, each year we sort of have this feature bird. We put them on the shirts. We try and basically create during our different socials and everything, we kind of try to bring about aspects of the bird and just kind of make it fun and unique. Registration is open now. It will close April 18th, which is basically the Friday. I'm gonna make this really complicated. It's basically the week before, but it's the Friday. It's April 18th. I should not have tried to explain that. My brain is not functioning, which is not good. So 2024, I mean, I have a couple of the highlights on here for birds that we saw in 2024, but Brian, if I missed any, this is where Brian shines. So probably the three big ones for us, because they were lifers for Birding with Extension, were we saw a Philadelphia vireo, we saw a bald eagle, and then we saw a common loon, which was kind of one of those. And the property where we saw the common loon, it really caught all of our participants off guard that they saw it, because it was literally in the middle of basically like Chihuahuan desert habitat. So but yeah, so kingfishers, green jays, we'll go through each of these different trips. We'll talk about the trips themselves, what to sort of expect, and then Brian will touch on the different birds that you could potentially see on those different trips. So if you're looking for a specific bird, he can pinpoint you towards maybe which trip would be better suited to your needs. Okay, now on to the schedule, because everyone loves schedules. So like I already said, Thursdays when everything kicks off. However, our trips don't actually start until Friday. So Thursday we have check-in that starts at 3. We'll close at 6. If you do sign up for our beginner track, which we will talk a little bit more about the beginner and photography track later on, and what's involved in those. But if you're part of the beginner track, meaning you are new to birding, you just need to take it just a little bit slower. We do have a meeting that is required, that is mandatory, from 5 to 5:30. So you'll basically get to meet your guide and your birding buddy that are going to be with you the entire weekend. And they're just going to cover a couple of basic things. All of our trips, really, we're in no rush for any of our trips. So even if you are new to the Del Rio area, or you're coming in from outside of Texas and birding, you know, you don't have to go to the beginner track just because you're new to the Texas region, new to Texas birds. All of our guides are very knowledgeable in all the birds, and we'll be happy to teach you. But after that beginner track meeting, we have our very first social, which is the Talk About Extension welcome dinner. So we're going to have tacos, hence the Talk About Extension. We are going to, we'll just sort of give you all a brief rundown of what extension is, sort of some last minute details of what to expect for the rest of the weekend. And then after the extension dinner, or the Talk About Extension dinner, we'll send you all home. And then Friday morning is the very first day of trips. So our trips are going to depart anywhere from 5 to 6:30. It's just going to depend upon what trip you select. Once you get back from your trip should get back about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There is one trip called the Devil's River trip that will not get back till 4, because it is quite a ways away. So we'll have educational talks every afternoon, and this year we're going to have a talk that's going to be about bird nutrition. We're going to have a talk about eBird and sort of some tips and tricks how to really get the most out of eBird. We're going to do a plant ID talk, among others, but those are just some basic ones. That Friday night, you have one of 2 options. So included in your registration is this Tweets and Treats social. And that's just going to be some, I'll call it heavy hors d'oeuvres. Is that how you would describe it?
Let's say heavy appetizers. Yeah, I guess
Heavy,
hors d'oeuvres. Yeah.
heavy appetizers. We will also have our feature bird cocktail, which I forget what Danny said it was called. It sounds delicious though, but it will be themed again around our feature bird, the hooded oriole. Now you have a secondary option of going to this birds, bats, and owls benefit dinner. Now that is an additional cost to your registration and trip. So we'll talk about that trip a little bit later. Saturday, pretty much same breakdown as Friday, with the exception of we will have our birding with extension dinner, which is again also included in that $75 registration fee. Sunday morning, again, vans will depart. All trips will return at 2, at which point we will bid you all a fond farewell, and hope you all had an absolutely fantastic time. So that is a very basic schedule. If you're looking for more details, you can visit our website, which is wildlife.tamu.edu/birding to get the really, really nitty gritty details of everything. So did I miss anything?
I think you hit that one all on the head, guys. So I think our goal is to be educationally minded. So, when you're talking about the beginner track, one thing to note is that we understand that there's different levels of birding, and all of our trips are designed to be beginner, intermediate, advanced friendly. Our guides have that heart for education, and they're specifically hired with that in mind. And so the beginner track just has a little bit the unique, we'll talk about that when we get to the track, but it has the unique opportunity for you to stay together with the same group and the same guide for the whole weeks to kind of elevate that learning experience if you're looking, if you're just starting out birding. So I think you hit it all on the head, and just, it's really neat. We really enjoy having everyone be able to participate in socials, as well as our educational events in the afternoons.
Okay, so now we're going to dive into all of our different trips that we have to offer. So do you want me to start with trips, or do you want to go first?
I think the best way to do this, Liz, is if you will give us the trip, okay, when that scheduled trip they could sign up for those dates. I will take a little bit of the Emily version of the trip, and then Brian can take his version of the trip.
Okay, works for me. Okay, so below the dam. So this is one of those restricted access properties that Emily has mentioned. And so this is actually literally, so if y'all are familiar with the Del Rio area, there is a dam there called Amistad Dam. It's actually pictured at the bottom of this, this slide. So you are literally going below this Amistad Dam, and normally it is restricted access. You have to pass a bunch of border patrol. It's regulated by the national park. It's a whole to-do to actually get down there. But once you're down there, you are on the river and you can look right over into Mexico. So technically speaking, you could start your Mexico birding list on this trip if you happen to see a bird on the other side of the river. But this is it's a really cool trip. You're literally on the water the entire time, and on the other side you have this basically like a sheer cliff that you're gonna I was gonna start talking about birds. That's not my area. We're gonna leave that to Brian. But you can see all sorts of different birds. The below the dam trip is going to be on Friday. So Emily, any other?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. You're going to be right there on the border between Texas and Mexico on the Rio Grande River. As you can see, there's that basin of water right below the dam that's great for waterfowl, Brian will talk about. But there's also, so you're going to be walking the path that you see on that picture. So then at this trip, you're going to be walking on caliche roads that are fairly stable. So mobility issues wouldn't be a problem. You're also not going to walk a far way. And in the morning, most of this walk is going to be shaded. So it's a really pleasant morning. And we only offer this trip once during Birding the Border. As Liz said, this is very restricted access, and that we're thankful that we get to have access to things to the Amistad National Recreation Area. It is part of the National Park Service, It is not open to the public
Mhm.
at all.
Oh,
Yeah,
just
so
just
not at all.
border, unless you decide to get a job with Border Patrol or the National Park Service,
You cannot go here.
you cannot go there.
So
So
Brian, take it away.
Yeah, so this is a kind of a unique spot. They were mentioning it's right along the river, so political boundary, of course. But also the river is a migratory pathway for birds moving through, in addition to being habitat for waterfowl and things. So here we have Mexican duck, which is kind of a regional specialty here in the Southwest. We have a good chance down there amongst other waterfowl that may be lingering around, usually for the festival or for birding the border. That's not a festival.
It's not.
We know we keep a tally of all the species that we see cumulatively, and there are often several species that come from this trip that we don't get elsewhere, because there are some special, it's a good place for ducks to hide out before they migrate. So like bufflehead and things like that might be still hanging out there. And then, like Liz was mentioning, along those cliffs, there's nesting cliff swallows that are really awesome to watch coming in and out. Usually we see them under like underpasses and things, but to see them in a natural limestone bluff is really awesome. And then you'll be walking through some brush. So we got a Bell's Vireo there. Also, there'll be chats and sparrows maybe lingering around, painted bunting, things like that. So it's got a diversity of habitats, kind of some edge habitat. So it's really interesting trip. Highly recommend.
And the rookery on the Mexico side.
Yeah, so the great blue heron down there. Yeah, there's a rookery of those guys that we put in the scope on the other side of the river. That's pretty impressive too.
and isn't there a great horned owl nest? But have we seen the owl on using the
Yes.
nest,
Yes,
or
we've seen that. We've seen the owl there.
okay?
Mhm.
Sometimes we see them, sometimes we don't. It's
Yep,
just
you never know.
luck of the draw, as y'all probably know. Okay, so our next trip. So we have Baker's Crossing. So some of y'all, again, if you've been to the area, you've maybe seen a hotspot labeled Baker's Crossing, and you're like, why would I pay to go just to an eBird hotspot that's right there? Well, this is actually, it's a ranch at Baker's Crossing. So they don't want us to share the name of the ranch. It's basically just the ranch at Baker's Crossing. So you basically get to see behind the scenes at that Baker's Crossing hotspot. And it's this absolutely beautiful ranch. Driving up to that spot, you're like, where am I going? Like from these pictures, you would never guess that you're just about to drive into this area that's full of water. It's just this, Trans-Pecos Chihuahuan desert, and all of a sudden you just start to see these big trees and more water, and it really is beautiful. And I feel like this is one of those trips that a lot of people miss out on, because I think it's because of the name of it sometimes, but it really is truly a beautiful spot. The property has a few ponds on it that host a whole bunch of different birds, lots of mature trees on it. It really and truly is an absolutely beautiful property.
Absolutely. So that is, like Liz says, one of the underbirded trips, definitely that gets missed a lot by our participants. Brian's guided that trip for like the past 3 years, I believe, since we've had it. And I think he would say the same. Definitely, the neat thing is it is kind of an eBird hotspot, so you kind of know what you're going to get by referencing eBird. But like Liz says, so you get to go on and access the private property right there along the Devil's River. And this portion of the Devil's River is going to be further west than any of our other stops on the Devil's River. So great birding. Brian, take it away.
Oh, I forgot to say, so the ranch at Baker's Crossing, that trip is going to be on Friday. So it's the same day as Below the Dam.
So from a birding perspective, again, we're along the river in this riparian habitat like they were mentioning. So we have a couple different habitats in a small area where they kind of converge, and so we get this diversity of birds. So that kingfisher pictured there at the bottom left was actually taken during birding the border. during a Baker's Crossing trip, and we were having our little picnic lunch there, and we found a green kingfisher nest in the bank right below where we were eating lunch. So just a really cool stuff that happens out there. Another year I was guiding out there. It was we have a pretty interesting luck with the weather during these events sometimes, but this was a rainy day where we were out at Baker's Crossing, and I was kind of like, ooh, what are we gonna get in the rain? But we ended up with more than, I want to say, more than 70 species or somewhere around there, just in the rain. Just they're just it's always birdie when I go there. I don't know. I've just never had a bad time. One of my very first and most fondest memories of birding in the Trans-Pecos region was actually visiting this ranch on the other side of the river from where we get to go, and just amazing stories I could tell about that experience there. So it just has magic for some reason, and I really wish more people would get out there.
Yeah, and I don't think we mentioned this, but this property is on either side of the Devil's River, just the lower portion of it. Okay, so our next trip is this Big Day Del Rio. Now, we've done this in the past, but we've decided after last year, we had some very, very competitive people for our normal Big Day Del Rio. So we decided to kick it up a notch and make it more of a competition. So for y'all, if you've never experienced a big day, what a big day is you literally spend 24 hours and you try and get the most number of bird species possible. Whether you're sitting in one location, whether you're traveling around to several different locations, you're just trying to get a large number of species. And since we're in Del Rio, we are going to do it in Del Rio, but this is with a twist. So we actually are pitting two of our bird guides against each other, and we are going to split this trip in two. And those bird guides are going to try and outbird each other. So this is the first year we've done this, and I think we're all really excited about this. But Del Rio is this really pretty city. It has this river, this river that runs through it called this, or technically a creek. They call it a creek, the San Felipe Creek. And again, you would never know it driving up to Del Rio, but one of the first things that you cross is this San Felipe Creek. And they have all sorts of different, again, birds surrounding it, because this is, South Texas, even the Trans-Pecos, kind of the hill country as well. We don't have a lot of water out here. So any form of water, doesn't matter if it's running or standing, you're going to find birds. And the San Felipe Creek is absolutely beautiful. And again, Del Rio is just really one of those very underbirded communities. So we're really trying to show people what Del Rio has to offer. Got anything else, Emily?
Absolutely. So on Big Day Del Rio, you do not have to bird all day for 24 hours in the duel. We have amended those rules. That trip starts, I believe it's 7. I'd like to confirm that. 6:37. And then you have to be back by 2. So there is a perimeter border around the city of Del Rio. So we give a little extra than the city limits, and it hits a little bit of Lake Amistad. And so we're excited to see how the diversity of Big Day Del Rio, because you go from San Felipe Creek all the way to the Rio Grande, and in a road that we call Vega Verde Road, that is also right there along the river, and have a lot of opportunities to see a diverse group of species within various habitats right in the middle of the city of Del Rio. Brian?
From a birding perspective, Del Rio has, like they mentioned, so many different habitats, so you get a huge diversity of birds. I would expect the species total could hover somewhere around 100 species for the day, or for that, not even for a full big day. It's just 7 to 2 or whatever. I wouldn't be shocked by that. and yeah, the water there brings in so many different birds. And we have some really special birds that can be found in that habitat too. So like at the bottom right there, we have the Morlet's seed eater, which reaches its northern extent of its range globally there in Del Rio. So we look for those along the river there at Vega Verde. We have some isolated breeding populations like the Mississippi kites, like that guy at the bottom left. Then we have South Texas specialty birds like great kiskadees that are possible, olive sparrows, those kinds of things. And you're going at a pretty quick pace, so you're going to see a lot of things. And like they mentioned, the guides that we try to pick are going to be educating you and doing that all to the best of their ability. But that being said, this is more of a fast-paced trip. So if you're more of a beginner, you're just learning to identify birds, this might be a little overwhelming. But if you feel like you have got some good skills, and this would be kind of more the one for you. I don't think you need to be advanced or anything, but just kind of able to keep up with a normal birding day. But anyway,
and
I think, go ahead.
I was gonna say, sorry, and this trip's gonna be on Sunday. This is a Sunday trip, so. Okay. Okay, so our next trip is the Devils River State Natural Area. So this is one that is actually two different trips that we offer. So we offer a Devils River, what's called the Del Norte unit, which is the northern portion of this state natural area. And then they actually have a second unit called the Dan A. Hughes unit, which is a little bit south of that. So if you're registering and you have questions about which one to pick, please by all means reach out to Emily or myself, and we will be able to sort of help you walk through which trip may be better suited to you. The trip for Dan Allen Hughes, or the Dan A. Hughes unit, is Sunday, and the Del Norte unit is going to be on Saturday. Now, while these are both on the Devils River, they are ever so slightly different in the habitats they have. The North unit, the benefit to doing the North unit is you are going to also be able to see Dolan Falls, which is pictured here on the bottom. Absolutely beautiful waterfall. Again, just kind of this like little oasis. You're going to see some really, really cool birds on this trip that you aren't going to see on others. I'm not going to spoil it. Brian, you can talk about what special birds you might see on this trip. For the Dan A. Hughes unit, this is one that last year was the first year that we did this trip. At that point in time, it was closed to the public. I believe we just had a meeting today, and I believe one of our volunteers mentioned that it is now open to the public for day use. But y'all can go out with some great bird guides, and this is actually, sorry, Brian, I'm going to steal some of your thunder. So the Dan A. Hughes unit was actually where we saw the bald eagle last year, and there is actually a bald eagle nest on the opposite side of the Devils River. But the Devils River, if you've never seen it, is an absolutely beautiful river, if you can't already tell by these pictures. So we recommend all of our trips, but I think personally this is one of my favorite trips. It is quite a long drive out there. It is one of our earliest trips that leaves. This trip leaves at 5:15 in the morning. But I very much do, if you've never been to Devils River State Natural Area, I very much recommend doing this trip. Emily, did I miss anything?
No, one thing I would also like to add though, on these two properties are both open to the public. But something to note is that we like to take that behind the scenes approach. So there are areas of both state natural areas that we are excited to share with you that are not open to the public, that you would not have access to if it were not for Birding the Border. And the awesome thing about this trip as well is we've matched up our guide, Romy Swanson, who is part of the Devils River Conservancy group. I always butcher their name a little bit. And so we're excited to have him share an area of the state and two places that he likes to bird often. So he would be, I would consider him a local guide, but also he's the TOS president this year. So highly knowledgeable and a person who really has birded these areas extensively and can share all the great hidey holes.
So moving on to birds.
Yeah, so the Devil's River, like they said, is a really spectacular trip. And to be guided out there by Romy is like the best possible situation. And the birding out there is phenomenal. This has always been, you know, one of our crown jewel trips. It's one of our fastest selling. We do multiple trips out to the Devil's River because it's so amazing. So I would highly recommend any of our trips that visit that area. So right along the river, we've got water birds that we'll be looking for. All three kingfishers are possible. We usually have nesting zone-tailed hawks nearby. And you're kind of at where east meets west. So at the bottom left there, you got yellow-throated warblers. Those are breeding up in the sycamores along the river. And then in the juniper hills behind, you've got breeding varied buntings in sort of their, you know, eastern limit of their range. It's just this weird mixing of species in this habitat that's kind of surreal, especially in springtime when you've got migration going on and all sorts of random things can pop up from east or west. So yeah, definitely one of my favorite trips that I've had the privilege to guide. Always feel really lucky when I get to go out there. I think the place kind of sells itself. It's just amazing.
Are you going to talk about the special bird?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So
Oh.
I guess so.
Sorry.
I guess I should. I don't know why I didn't have a picture of it there. But it is one of the places, or I guess the only place in the world where the northern Parula and tropical Parula overlap in their breeding range is along this sort of stretch of the westernmost hill country. And so this is really where the hill country peters out, is right here at the state natural area. And a lot of the Parulas out there are hybrids. So it's really fun kind of parsing through them, looking for the pure tropicals, finding the hybrids, and it's something that hasn't been formally studied or published. So it's kind of this frontier of, you know, identification and ornithology sort of stuff. So it's interesting. It's just a really, really fascinating place to visit.
Okay, so our next trip is Dobbs Run Ranch, and this is one of those, I know we've said this about every property, but this is so this one holds a special place in my heart because it has you have the opportunity to see Montezuma quail, which I did my master's project on. But other than that, I mean, this is just a typical, beautiful, a very good representation of a Texas hill country property. It is privately owned. So again, this is a property that if you don't come to Birding the Border, you're not going to be able to just drive up to the gate and say, hey, can I come birding there? And it is a wonderfully managed property. And this is, you know, like all of our other properties that we have at Birding the Border, just really takes that, our motto of good habitat management. You know, you get good birds with habitat management. And the fun thing about this trip is that if you've never gotten to ride, because it is such a large property and we do cover quite a large area, you do actually get to ride on UTVs or utility vehicles that are provided by, graciously provided by the ranch. So you get to cover, again, a lot of ground, see a lot of birds over a relatively short amount of time with fairly minimal walking. With this one, because it is in the hill country, again, I said minimal walking, but in some of the areas that we do walk, it's like your typical hill country. There are quite a bit of rocks. So some footing can be a little bit unstable, but it is fairly minimal walking on this property.
This trip is also limited to 6 participants. or 6 or 8 participants. It's a very low number trip. We do not extend this invitation to a lot. This trip is also listed on our beginner trip in hopes that we can get all of our participants a golden cheeked warbler and a black-capped vireo for our beginner trips. But riding on the ATVs is pretty neat experience.
And
Brian?
oh, this is a Friday trip. So if you do not sign up for the beginner trip, the only day you're going to be able to go to this property is on Friday.
So from the birding side, like Emily mentioned, our big target out here is the golden cheeked warbler. This is our best trip for them. It's the best habitat for them. It's that classic, really rolling hills, hill country, lots of ash juniper, mature ash juniper that's managed exceptionally well. Just the ranch itself is gorgeous. Even if you didn't see any birds, just going out riding around the UTVs and seeing the property is worth it. But in that hill country habitat, we also get things like woodhouses, scrub jays. We have a slight chance for gray vireo out there. That they kind of reached the eastern limit of their range, right about at their property, pretty much a little bit further east, I guess. And then we get some of the more common widespread things showing really well, like vermilion flycatcher there at the bottom right. It's also a really good property for Scott's oriole. That's one we don't get on too many trips. So if you're looking for that one, that's a good one. And then other hill country birds like Hutton's vireo, black-capped vireo, lots of vireos. Black and white warblers are breeding out there. Like Liz mentioned, the Montezuma quail, we have seen them there once, heard them there once. It's definitely a ghost bird, but if you wanted to have a chance, that's where you would go. So anyway, it's just a phenomenal trip. Highly recommend. That top left golden cheek warbler picture was actually taken right there at Dobbs.
Okay, so next trip is going to be Fort Clark Springs, and this is going to be a Friday trip.
I think we better let Brian do the whole thing because Brian was born, raised, and got his birding start right there at Fort Clark Springs. So I'm gonna pause us there. This is a Friday only trip, correct, Liz?
Yes, Friday only trip.
Friday only trip, and we'll let Brian take it away from there.
Okay. So like Emily said, Fort Clark Springs is where I became a birder back when I was 10 years old. So that's where I grew up. And the birding there is just really rich. It's another one of these oases in sort of the surrounding brush country, arid brush country. And on this trip, we'll do a good amount of walking. So I would say, be able to walk a few miles. So it kind of feels like a longer day in some ways, but we see a lot of birds. This is often one of the highest list trips of the whole deal. It's right up there with Big Day because the habitat there is so rich. Because of that water, because of these huge, really old ancient oak trees and pecan trees and hackberries and all this stuff that brings in these migrating birds as well as the breeding birds. So we have from the birding side of things, lots of good opportunities for migrants in the large oaks. So live oak trees host more insects than pretty much any other plant around. So, and the fort has an abundance of live oaks. So that's good news for songbirds. It's also our only trip with a chance for green jay. So green jays kind of reach the northwest limit of their range, pretty much right at Fort Clark. Occasionally they wander over to Del Rio, but not super often. And we get other, valley specialty birds like long-billed thrasher, olive sparrow, kiskadees, And then we also get lots of those eastern breeding birds, like we have indigo bunting and yellow-throated vireo here. But I mean, just the abundance is amazing. We also have access to some water treatment ponds, where we'll have a chance for lingering waterfowl and shorebirds and things like that. It's just, if you want to see a lot of birds, and get your steps in, this is a good one. Definitely. I mean, I'm super biased, but I can't recommend this one enough either.
And all the roads, all the walking trails on that are fairly much real walking trails. We're not going off in the brush there. So
No, yeah, it's all very well maintained. They're very popular walking trails, and people ride golf carts up and down them and that sort of stuff. So it's not like crazy terrain or anything. It's just walking. Yeah.
And if we have not covered, which I think we skipped some of that at the beginning of I'll say the walking conditions, you can find this information. So if you go to our website and then click on the trip, you'll get all the information. It will also say, I believe at the bottom, it will tell you roughly how far you're going to walk, roughly what the terrain is going to be like. If you do have any specific questions about terrain, because you're unsure, again, reach out to Emily or myself. We'll be more than happy to help to guide you. So our next trip is Las Ciénegas. So this one is actually located in Del Rio. So this is probably one of our latest leaving trips, if you're not much of an early bird. And this is actually located basically in the heart, pretty well in the heart of Del Rio. It's kind of one of those where you're driving to it and you're like, what have I signed up for? But once you get on the property, it is very surprising. So this is actually an eBird hotspot, actually called the Duck Pond. And the people that own this property basically put up a fence around the property, but allowed people to drive up from the road. There's a little stop off area you can stop and you can basically bird what's at the pond. So all sorts of different waterfowl show up. But what's behind that is basically a bunch of different smaller ponds. And Emily, you always explain this really, really well, but this whole property is basically has a bunch of it's basically fed by irrigation, correct?
So the irrigation ditches around Del Rio stem from all the springs. And so agriculturally, all of these properties were flood irrigated historically. And so there's a series of ditches and canals that make up these series of ponds through the Las Ciénegas property. So I would say you go from very harsh riparian areas and the big large pond that's up front so open pasture land in the back, and even you get into some brushy country and then into some wooded country. So there's the series of canals and ditches that go all along and extend the whole Ciénegas property that really make it unique. So I like to call this like behind the scenes at the duck pond, because everybody can see the front pond, but not everybody has those opportunities to see the back. And one thing that I really am waiting for, hopefully Birding the Border 2025 comes, I am waiting for a Morlet seed eater to be found on Las Ciénegas. So I'm waiting for a seed eater to be found here. Brian, I don't think there was.
I was gonna say Brian was giving you oh no, we did. Brian, didn't we see one last year?
It happened, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it happened. I called it last year. I didn't know I called two. I called one for sure. Bird at a new property.
You called that one. Yeah.
They got it. So it's a neat property. The hosts are so gracious. Brian, talk about the birds, because I think this is one of my favorite stops. And you get to sleep in the latest, guys. That's the biggest perk here.
And I think this is one of those properties that, kind of like Baker's, it's one of those that people are like, well, why would I go see it if I can just pull up and just see what's on the pond? But this is just one of those properties that there's so much more to offer behind the fence that, again, if you came just out of the blue, you wouldn't get access to otherwise. So, but more importantly, Brian, what birds are we going to see?
Well, I just want to add that from my perspective, this was, I grew up at Fort Clark and I grew up birding in Del Rio. And I would stop at the little pull off at this property at the, outside the fence all the time, and I would look for birds. And I thought it was so cool, and I would go there all the time. And then when we started doing birding with extension stuff, and I met Emily, and we started, working on this project, she worked her magic and got us. She said that we could get into the duck pond property. I was like, "There's more," and she said, "Oh yes," and took me out there, and it blew me away. So, as someone who had been visiting this spot for a long time, it is that's nothing. The back is where it's at. It's amazing. And so it's really, really cool opportunity to get into this property. And it's definitely going to host some rare birds as time goes on. It's basically Del Rio's answer to Fort Clark in a way. Kind of like, well, I guess the base is as well, but um, it's just awesome. So waterfowl possibilities, you've got migrant bird species possibilities, lots of warblers, tanagers, and those big mulberry trees. And then we've got those South Texas specialties as well, like the long-billed thrasher there. And then good diversity of wading birds usually. We got green heron, usually have a chance for night heron. Common gallinule, that's usually the only place we get that one. And like we just mentioned, last year we got our first Morlet's seed eater out there. So several years ago during the big freeze, their population declined tremendously. And then we got access to kind of come out to Cienega. So we've been looking for one, hoping that one would show up there as their population has been rebounding. And then sure enough, it happened. So we're hoping that that becomes kind of a regular spot for them. So anyway, there's just so much potential here, so much chance for discovery and fun stuff. So if you get to go out there, it's lucky chance.
And this is a Sunday trip. This is one of those trips that it is very minimal walking. We actually do a hayride. So it's one of those where y'all will walk a little bit and then hop on a hayride. We'll drive you up a little bit. You'll walk a little bit. The walking that is done is pretty, they're not paved or caliche roads, but the roads are pretty flat.
Good trail.
Yeah, they're pretty well traveled. So nothing terribly crazy with this one.
I think, Brian, the thing that most excites me about the duck pond is just the variety of habitats you almost travel within the back of that property. So it's a really interesting kind of habitat diversion from all of them. So
yes. Oh, I did also forget to mention with the duck pond, that is also part of the beginner track. So our next one, so this is Laughlin Air Force Base, and this was a new trip that we had last year. And we are very fortunate enough to go back onto Laughlin Air Force Base. And if you haven't already guessed it, because it's an Air Force base, it is not one of those properties that you can just, again, drive up to the gate and say, I would like to go birding. You're probably going to get a crazy look, and you're probably going to get the military police called on you if you pull up to the gate. So please don't do that. But this is probably the only property that we have that is like a really true 100% representation of that South Texas brush, and even really a prairie type ecosystem. But the Air Force Base is one of those properties that, we've only been out there 1 year. So really the possibilities are kind of endless in regards to the birds that could show up there. But they do have a couple of riparian areas on the property, which again, driving up to it, you wouldn't sort of expect that. If you're driving from San Antonio or from the eastern side of Del Rio, you'll actually pass the Air Force Base coming in, and you may drive past again and be like, what the heck? Like, you're just like, why are y'all going there? But they have some fantastic birds. And one of our guides, the person that guided last year, actually, he worked on the Air Force Base. He worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and worked on the BASH program, which is basically, he was just trying to mitigate airbird strikes with the aircraft. Since Laughlin Air Force Base is mainly, its main operation is to train pilots. But did I miss anything?
all right, so date, what day is this one?
Oh, this one is a Sunday trip as well.
So late departure time, guaranteed to be home by 2, things like that. Brian, you actually had the opportunity to bird this for the first time last year. It was even so closed off that Brian Koch, the local birder, had never been birding on base. And so we're proud to have given him that opportunity, and all of y'all as well. And there are some security measures that must be taken place prior to you going on base. So if you sign up for this trip, you will expect an email asking for some driver's license numbers to be able to access the base. Brian?
Yeah, so this was another kind of version of that same story I just told, where it was another place where I had seen the outside of it, but this time thought nothing of it. But then when I actually finally got to go in last year, totally blew my mind. I did not know. I just didn't know. So anyway, it also has in addition to, you know, the riparian habitats, it also, like Fort Clark, has water treatment ponds that while Brandon has been birding out there working at the base, has pulled some insane rare birds at those ponds. So the rarity potential is not only there, it's already been realized. It has a history now. So who knows what could show up out there. Probably one of our better spots for shorebirds because of those ponds. The riparian habitats have lots of those same things I was mentioning about Fort Clark. And then the brush country, like Liz was mentioning, is also exceptional there too. So you have a chance for black-throated sparrows, pyraloxias, those kinds of things out in the scrubbier habitat. This will be another one of our trips with a really high species list, somewhere 90 plus, I would say, is totally reasonable. Not to set expectations.
Not expecting
I was
from the
gonna
road.
say, no
But-
pressure to whoever's guiding this trip or anything like that.
But last year it was somewhere in that ballpark, I want to say. And it's David guiding it this year, maybe?
Yes.
If so,
Yes.
I would say that's a safe bet somewhere around there.
So we're coming to the end of our properties. But we have McKenna Ranch. So this is a property. If you go to Devil's River, you will actually drive past and technically through the property to get to Devil's River State Natural Area. And this is one of those properties that is kind of it has a lot of hidden gems to it. And again, this is a private property, so this is one that y'all would not necessarily have access to otherwise. But just really, really beautiful property. Lots of mature junipers. And this is a property that has been in this family's possession for many, many years, and they are very passionate about wildlife and creating really good habitat for this property. And I don't think we've mentioned, but this is actually one of our photography track trips. But yeah, I feel like I'm missing a lot with this one. This is just one of those ones that it's a really cool trip to go on, but it's just one of those where you kind of have to take a chance and go to really like experience it in person.
Yeah, and a great thing about the McKenna Ranch is Kathy Mueller, the host, is gonna feed you lunch, and so you're gonna have a unique. She's gonna welcome you into her home, feed you a spread for lunch, and she even has a little pond in her backyard. So then we get raves and rants about the host, Miss Mueller, along with the birding. This is field photography on the photography track, which Brian is awesome at. And this is actually one of the locations where we spent quite a bit of time photographing birds in the field when we were taking a lot of media shots for birding with extensions. So Brian, I'll let you take it over for the bird part of that. And if you want to touch on any photography a little bit.
Okay. So this property is out towards Devil's River, but like they said, not on the river. Which when I first learned about the property, I thought, but when you get out there, it really exceeds expectations for sure. The quality of the large oak mott's and the large mature ash junipers has a lot of potential. So like last year, another thing that Emily had predicted was a golden-cheeked warbler at McKenna, and that happened during Birding the Border last year. So that would be really one of the westernmost breeding or attempted breeding golden cheek warblers in the world would be there, or nearby somewhere on the state natural area or something. That would really be the limit. So that was cool that we got that to happen. Whereas black-cap vireos are really abundant out there. We should really have good luck with them. On a past photography trip, they actually found a nest out there and got to photograph them. I think they were incubating at that point. But anyway, really cool, beautiful birds out there as well, like painted buntings, blue grosbeaks, hooded orioles, Bullock's orioles. There's lots of nesting birds around the sort of homestead area and the barn and that. So lots of good, respectful photography opportunities of birds being really active throughout the day. So good opportunities for field photography there. So anyway, it's just a really exceptional property. I would really highly recommend you check it out.
Okay, so last property we're going to talk about is the Zebra Bueller Ranch. So this is, I'm going to say out, Emily, this is a special one
I will
for
take this
your
one.
heart. So you take this one.
So the Zebra Bueller Ranch is probably our furthest west property. As y'all can see, there's not much out there, but the purple Sinisa in that picture, in our kind of our brushy scrub desert kind of plants. And so this is the furthest west, and this is a working wool and mohair producing ranch. So they raise Angora sheep and Angora goats and Rambouillet sheep for wool and mohair. And so they've been partners with the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service from the beginning. So the Zebra Bueller family that owns this property has graciously welcomed Birding the Border out for several years. This is a neat opportunity to see species that are particularly adapted to the harsh environments and low water. The family does do some bird management as it is a dry area and make sure that there is a water source on the property, and has adapted their water tanks to help visiting flyover birds as they need it. So there's a lot of opportunities to see some unique birds on this property. Maybe I'll let Brian kind of dive into the bird part. But the unique thing is they're going to host you for lunch in their shearing shed. The family makes modeled birds out of the wool that they raise on the property. Liz, get yours. So it's a really neat opportunity that the family kind of can send you home with a treasure. They paint rocks. It's a really neat place. And getting to spend lunch in the shearing shed and bird at the same time is pretty unique. So this is a bird that the Zebra Bueller family created. As you can see, it's felted out of wool, dyed, and that would be a vermilion flycatcher made. They've made owls that are in hollow logs. Brian and I both have we both have painted rocks of the black-cap vireos. So Brian, take it away on the bird part, but definitely a special place that kind of combines that working agricultural lands with our management strategies.
So this is another awesome property, really unique habitat wise compared to a lot of our other trips because it's so arid. And so the birds are a little different. This, I would say, is not going to be the overwhelming trip species wise or pace wise, but it has really high quality birds and really unexpected things happen out here as well. So one of the birds that Liz mentioned at the beginning, the common loon that was a lifer for us last year during Birding the Border, that was a flyover during the Zebra Bueller Ranch trip. In the middle of the desert scrub, a common loon comes flying over. And it makes sense because Lake Amistad is nearby, so that's a common wintering site for them. So it was likely a bird that just decided, well, now it's time to migrate, and just flew right over the ranch, and they just happened to look up and see it. But just amazing that would happen, that the stars would align like that for us. We should get some migrating birds out there like clay-colored sparrows there at the top right, and more of our desert dwellers like the cactus wren and Paraloxia there on the bottom. And in the past, we've always listed a target bird here that's kind of become our thorn in our side, the black-tailed gnatcatcher. I was mentioning that freeze that knocked down the seed eaters. It did the same thing to the gnatcatchers. I'm not sure 100% why those species in particular were hit so severely in this area, but they are slowly making a recovery. It was a year ago, or maybe, I don't know, fairly recently, I saw my first black-tailed gnatcatcher back again in Valverde County. So that's one that we hope to become regular once again out Zuberbuehler. It's a fun little bird. And then yeah, the tanks and ponds, like Emily was mentioning, that the Zuberbuehlers have set up for us, really attract the birds just amazingly. The first day we went out there, and they had set up this long waterfall thing of cascading over the rocks, and it's beautiful setup, and they had all these bird feeders set up, and they said, does this look good? I thought, oh my gosh, yes, this is like above and beyond anything that you needed to do. This is amazing. And we had migrating American redstarts and like all sorts of fun stuff just popping around because there was water. So it's really cool what they've done out there. So highly, I would really check this one out, especially if you're wanting to get more of that desert scrub kind of feel.
Okay, so we're coming to the end. I know we've hit an hour, so we're not going to keep you all much longer. So we've touched on the beginner track and the photography track. So the beginner track, as of 6 o'clock, we have 4 spots left on that. You're going to go to the Zuberbuehler Ranch on Friday. Saturday, you're going to go to the Duck Pond, and Sunday, you're going to go to Dobbs Run Ranch. The photography track has 5 spots left, and you're going to be going to McKenna on Friday. Actually, those are flipped around. You're going to do Kickapoo Cavern State Park on Saturday and the Transition Ranch on Sunday. We did not cover Transition Ranch because only the photography track goes to that, because you're going to basically be sitting in these absolutely fantastic bird blinds. If you go to our website, you can get more information on the beginner track as well as the photography track. We've kind of already touched on this, but registration is $75 per person. Again, that includes you're going to get lunch for each of those trips. It's also going to include the socials in the evening, so that Talk About Extension, the Tweets and Treats social, as well as that Birding with Extension dinner on Saturday night. Each morning we will have a very light breakfast type items, basically very like mini muffins. We will have some coffee.
It is a coffee bar
It
with
is
a
a
few
coffee
extras. We definitely do not want to promote that we provide breakfast, but
Yes.
it is a coffee bar and we put a few snacky items.
So if you like a very heavy breakfast, we very much recommend that you get something before you depart your trip. If you're okay with just grabbing like a little mini muffin and a cup of coffee, or maybe like a little granola bar, and hit the road, then our coffee bar will be more than enough to satiate you. Some extra things that we have, we do have Birding the Border shirts, which you can see on our website. You can purchase a Spouse of Birder Pass, which is basically if you have a spouse or a friend that wants to come along with you but does not want to bird or is not a birder, you can purchase that Spouse of Birder Pass, and that will give them access to all of the evening socials, to the Birding with Extension dinner, that they can come along with you. I believe the last thing that we're going to talk about is that Birds, Bats, and Owls benefit dinner. So this is one of those trips that I really, really love this trip for a multitude of different reasons. So this Birds, Bats, and Owls benefit dinner is to benefit our Rio Diablo birding camp, which if y'all were looking at the slideshow before we kicked things off, you may have seen a slide about that, but Rio Diablo birding camp is basically an affordable youth camp that we have put together. This is very much a passion project for Brian. Brian, growing up, he always was, I feel like you should talk about this, Brian. I feel like I'm just talking about you while you're sitting here. But Rio Diablo Birding Camp is just trying to making birding camps affordable for the youth. So you come to this, it'll help fund scholarships and make that happen. But at this, you'll have an absolutely delicious catered dinner. Like
Good deal.
I normally go on this trip, and I am never disappointed with the dinner that they serve. You'll have some adult beverages there. You will also get the chance to go owling. So you'll get to go try and find the elf owl, which, knock on wood, we've been able to see him, I think, all but 1 year. And it was like, it was very windy that 1 year. But you will also get to go see the bat emergence at Stewart Bat Cave, which is what this video is showing. I believe the next one is a longer video, which we can skip or we can watch it. But if you've never seen a bat emergence, this is one of those things that I very much recommend experiencing at least once in your life. Any final thoughts, Emily?
No, I'll pass it over to Brian. It is truly a benefit dinner. We hope that we feed you well and you have a great experience.
Yeah, so I'll just add on, like Liz was mentioning, this is a benefit for the camp, and that's my favorite thing that I get to do throughout the whole year. It really means a lot to me on a personal level, but this is a great fundraiser for us to make that camp as affordable and accessible as possible. So we offer the camp already at a very affordable rate for the quality of the camp. And then we additionally offer scholarships to those in need. So all of this goes towards making the camp
Even more affordable.
possible, but then additionally adding those scholarships. So, every little penny helps. And this is just a great way to basically make that donation and get something really fun out of it. So the elf owl is always our big target out there. This is sort of the easternmost limit of their breeding range. And we also have a chance for eastern screech owl. Barred owl is possible. I've heard them out there before, as well as barn, as well as great horned. Those would be less common. The two smaller owls would be their better chance. And then you have a chance to hear things like common poorwill, Chuck Will's widow. You might have some common nighthawks flying around. And then we actually get there with a decent amount of daylight. So we might see some other birds while we're having our dinner and things too. So you might see some orioles, some tanagers, some buntings, and that sort of stuff. And actually, right where we will have dinner, I have also heard Montezuma quail once. So you just never know.
And one thing to note about this is if you choose to participate, this is a late evening. You do get back late. If you are gung-ho, you can for sure make it to the Devil's River the next morning. If you are like me and sleep is of the most essence, I highly don't recommend it. But it's definitely an interesting opportunity. So I hope everyone takes advantage of that.
So Birds, Bats, and Owls will be Friday night. So this is the same evening as that Tweets and Treats social. So I believe the Devil's River State Natural Area trip, or excuse me, the Del Norte trip is the following day. So again, if you want to do it, you can. We've had people do it in the past. It does make for a very, very rough morning, but it can be done if you have gung-ho enough to do it.
Absolutely.
But with that, that's pretty much all we have in regards to all of our different trips that we have. Do we want to open?
Yeah, we've got some questions that have come up. So definitely, is there a hotel we recommend? There's several. It just depends upon your likes. Our host hotel this year is the Ramada Del Rio. Definitely stay there. A lot of our events and our afternoons and check-ins will be there at the Ramada. But close to the Ramada is also the Holiday Inn Express, the Hampton Inn. They've built some new hotels. There's a La Quinta right down the way. I would say any of the major hotel chains right there around Ramada would be definitely in my recommendation. The host hotel is Ramada. We would recommend that as well. I hope we answered everybody's questions good enough, but if y'all have any questions, please put those in the chat. Brian, you have something to add?
No, nothing for me.
Oh,
I think,
I thought you were trying to talk and had your mic muted.
oh, no, sorry.
One thing I want to note about the photography tract and the beginner tract a little bit is on the photography tract, that's gonna start with field photography at McKenna. And then you're gonna go to a mix of blind and field photography at Kickapoo, and then you're gonna end the photography tract with blind photography. So there's been some, it will be focused on photography, but there will be a mix of that field and blind photography. And then the beginner tract is also to take you from basically west all the way furthest east to get you a diversity of species, but also some great habitats there. Well, Lisa, we thank you. That sounds wonderful. If you cannot make it this year, we will be there the first weekend of May in 2026 as well. So if you want to save the date, more than welcome to, and we hope you can make it. We will leave it open we'll stay on for a few more minutes if you have any questions. If not, feel free to hop off. Thank you for hanging with us for the full hour. That's all I really have. I think it'll be a great opportunity to get out and bird, especially an underbirded area of the state. One other feature that's on our website, and I will keep talking. One other feature that is on our website on all of those trips, if you click the trip, you'll get some more information, but on the bottom is also some past eBird links where you can click and see some of our past eBirds from each of those trips. So thank you everyone so much. We hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via email. We will be emailing everybody who participated our email, as well as a copy of the recording, as well as a link to our website tomorrow. So if y'all need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. One more time on the website, it is wildlife.tamu.edu/birding. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening. All right. Well, Bird with Extension team, I will see you via text message.
We will see y'all tomorrow. Talk to y'all later. Hope everyone has
Bye.
a great evening. Bye.